Your best death now. A Raven Darkblade Mystery. Chapter 3. Rich Dad, Dead Dad. Prosperity, Nevada was the kind of town that couldn't decide if it wanted to be a suburb or a desert, so it chose both poorly. The houses sat on sand-colored lots like expensive mirages, each one promising that yes, you too could live in the middle of nowhere for only $500,000. The FBI convoy pulled up to a house that screamed new money so loudly the neighbors had probably complained. Raven climbed out of the SUV, his height adjusting to 5 feet 9 inches in the desert heat, which he assumed was due to thermal expansion. Robert Rich now, Agent Powersuit said, reading from her tablet as they walked. Day trader, crypto enthusiast, and pyramid scheme survivor. Posted yesterday about finally understanding the difference between assets and liabilities. And now he's a liability to being an asset, Raven said, then immediately regretted it. Dark humor as a coping mechanism, Dr. Psychobabble noted approvingly. The gallows wit of genius. Inside, the house was a monument to financial self-help. Books lined every shelf. Think and Grow Rich. The Millionaire Next Door. Money, Master the Game. Motivational posters about compound interest covered the walls like expensive wallpaper. Robert Richnow's body sat at his desk, and what the killer had done to him made everyone reconsider their retirement plans. Rich Dad, Poor Dad, Agent Squarejaw said, holding up the book with evidence gloves. And the killer took it literally. Again. Raven looked, his brain trying to process what his eyes insisted was impossible. The victim had been split, financially. His right half was dressed in an expensive suit, Rolex visible on the wrist, gold chains around the neck. His left half wore thrift store clothes, patches on the elbows, shoes held together with the duct tape. The dividing line ran perfectly down the middle, as if someone had used a ruler and a very specific interpretation of wealth inequality. How is this even possible? Agent First Name asked, her voice climbing toward hysteria. The killer sedated him, then surgically. Keyboard warriors began, then stopped. Actually, I don't want to know. Look at the desk. Powersuit pointed. 2 sets of everything. On the right, champagne, caviar, a platinum credit card. On the left, tap water, ramen noodles, past due notices. The book lay open between them, annotated in red. Lesson learned. Being both rich and poor is fatal to your health. The report card was framed in actual gold. Student, Robert Richnow. Subject, financial literacy. Grade F. Comments. Failed to understand that the richest man in the graveyard is still dead. Net worth, 0. He's escalating the production value, Raven observed, mainly because everyone seemed to expect him to observe things. The duality, Psychobabble exclaimed, sketching furiously. Rich, poor, life, death, asset, liability. The killer's creating a physical manifestation of capitalist anxiety. That seemed like a lot to get from a corpse in a split suit, but Raven nodded wisely. There's more, a local detective said, looking queasy. The victim's bank accounts. Half his money was donated to charity right before death. The other half was spent on, he checked his notes, 10,000 lottery tickets. All losers. Giving and taking simultaneously, Powersuit mused. Our killer's getting philosophical. Raven wandered the crime scene, trying to look investigative. His foot kicked something that rolled under the desk, another library book. The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, with a Crimson City library sticker dated 2 weeks ago. He bent to pick it up. Finding something? Squarejaw asked. Just another book, Raven said, shoving it back under the desk where it belonged. Or didn't belong. He wasn't really sure about evidence protocols. The geographic patterns breaking down, keyboard warriors announced. Prosperity makes sense, but the next optimistic city should be Las Vegas, Raven interrupted, remembering his accidental prediction. Because gambling. With lives, like I said. But Vegas isn't optimistically named, First Name pointed out. Isn't it? Raven asked, stalling while his brain tried to catch up with his mouth. Vegas means hope in Spanish. It means meadows, keyboard warriors corrected. Meadows of hope, Raven said confidently, where dreams grow and die. It's poetic. Everyone stared at him. Brilliant, Psychobabble finally said. The killer's moving from literal optimism to metaphorical optimism. The evolution of a disturbed mind. Raven's phone buzzed. Jenny. 3 people from Crimson City checked out self-help books and flew to Vegas for a convention. Thought you should know. P.S. Why do you care about libraries suddenly? He stared at the message. Vegas. Convention. Self-help books. The pieces were all there, floating in his mind like a jigsaw puzzle in zero gravity. We need to get to Vegas, he announced. Why? Powersuit asked. What are you seeing that we're not? Raven panicked. Because... His eyes landed on the lottery tickets scattered on poor Dad's side of the desk. The killer's gambling on his next victim. Vegas is where you gamble. It's symbolic of gambling. My God, Squarejaw said. He's going to hit the self-help convention at the Mirage. Hundreds of potential victims in one location. Convention? Raven asked, his height shooting to 6 feet 1 inch with surprise. The annual Life Optimization Summit, keyboard warriors read from her screen. 3,000 attendees. Tony Robbins is the keynote speaker. We need teams at every casino, Powersuit commanded. Every hotel hosting self-help seminars. Every dash. Wait, Raven said, a thought occurring to him like a sloth crossing a highway, slowly and probably too late. What if the killer isn't in Vegas yet? What if they're still choosing their next book? From where? First Name asked. From... Raven's brain churned like butter that didn't want to be butter. From wherever they get their books? Amazon, someone suggested. Or a bookstore, another agent offered. Or, Raven said, the word library dancing just out of reach of his consciousness. A place with books that loans them for free with due dates. A lending facility? Psychobabble said slowly. Sure, Raven agreed, having no idea what he'd almost discovered. The room erupted in theories about lending facilities and book-sharing apps, while Raven stood there, staring at Robert Richnow's split corpse. Rich Dad on one side, Poor Dad on the other, both equally dead. His phone buzzed again. A photo from Jenny of the Crimson City Library's self-help section. Half the shelves were empty. Huh, Raven said to no one. What is it? Powersuit asked. Nothing, Raven said, pocketing his phone. Just, libraries exist. Yes, Powersuit said slowly. They do. In cities, Raven added. Most cities, yes. Cities like Crimson City. Is this going somewhere, detective? Raven stared at her, his mouth open, his brain trying to connect dots that were practically holding hands. I forget what I was saying. Vegas, Powersuit reminded him. We need to get to Vegas. Right. Vegas. For the gambling. Of death. The death gambling. As the FBI team prepared to descend on Las Vegas like a very serious plague of locusts, Raven stood in Robert Richnow's house of split personalities and failed dreams. Something important was staring him in the face, probably literally, possibly wearing a library sticker. But if it was really important, surely someone would point it out. Right? To be continued. In Vegas, probably. Author's note. This chapter is dedicated to everyone who's ever tried to be both rich and poor simultaneously, which economically makes no sense but emotionally feels very real. Also to Robert Kiyosaki, whose book title was just asking for this interpretation. Any resemblance to actual financial advice is purely coincidental and should not be followed unless you want to end up like Robert Richnow, either half.